All right, today we're going to talk about the age of imperialism from the standpoint of the different foreign policies of the imperial presidents. Now, if you're taking a look at this, you're probably recognizing, hey, Roosevelt, Taft, Wilson, aren't those the progressive presidents? Yes, they are. But now we're just kind of looking at them in a different lens from the imperialist or expansionist sort of viewpoint and policies that these presidents did. So let's start with Roosevelt. Uh, so we have to go back to 1823, the Monroe Doctrine, which basically stated that European powers have to stay out of our half of the world. They have to stay out of Latin America, South America. That is going to be the sphere of influence that the United States is going to capitalize on. We're going to influence those markets. We're going to, you know, take advantage of resources from there. Europeans can no longer colonize, can't have new colonies in that half of the world. In 1904, Roosevelt is looking to make an addition or a corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. And basically, it's adding some teeth to the Monroe Doctrine. Back in 1823, we didn't have a large navy or military to really enforce that. We couldn't really technically keep out some of the world powers at that point. It would be very difficult to do so. But in 1904, the United States is very industrialized, very militarized. We do have a very strong navy. Now we can look to regulate and police our half of the world. We can actually do something about keeping foreign countries out of our half of the world. Um, Examples of Roosevelt's corollary in action: the Platt Amendment, which was an outcome of the Spanish American War. We send troops into the Dominican Republic in 1905. Um, we're backing the Panamanian Revolution from Colombia in 1903. We're going to help Venezuela create a blockade. We're going to prevent the Germans from getting into Venezuela because, again, this is our backyard. This is our sphere of influence. And this is going to be us sort of flexing our military muscle here. Other examples of U.S. intervention throughout Latin America, South America. We're going to get involved. We're going to fight war against Mexico. We're going to get involved, intervene in Guatemala. We're going to get involved in Honduras numerous times. Haiti, Dominican Republic. We're going to be back into Cuba again. We're going to be back and forth there. Like I said, the Panamanian Revolution we are involved in. So very heavy-handed approach to regulating our half of the world, so to speak. Speak softly, carry a big stick. This was sort of like the phrase that was used to sort of sum up the Roosevelt corollary. And in this famous political cartoon, we see Teddy Roosevelt wielding the new diplomacy. That's what it says on this club here. So sometimes we would use direct military force. Sometimes just the sheer threat of using our Navy or our military was enough to deter European powers from intervening or meddling in our half of the world. Another political cartoon here, Roosevelt with a big stick, and he's dragging behind him a series of boats, militarized naval fleet here, and kind of encircling the Caribbean, which is just south of us. Basically stating, yep, this is our area, this is our region to sort of regulate and control. And here again, Roosevelt on the ship of a naval vessel, pointing a big giant cannon at a European power. We know it's European because he's got wearing a crown, he looks like a king. It says Monroe Doctrine on the tip of the cannon here. And then caught in the middle here with no voice, no say whatsoever are the poor people of Santo Domingo. Uh, you know, they're just kind of there, and they're not as militarized. They don't have as strong as a government to sort of do anything about either the U.S. or the European powers intervening in their countries. Okay, so William Howard Taft, his imperialist policy is known as dollar diplomacy. So basically, instead of using the military, Taft is going to use um, the industrialists, the banking industry, uh, and sort of invest in Latin America. So he's basically saying the more we can invest in Latin American, South American countries, the more we're going to get out of it. So he's looking to build roads, develop infrastructure, railroads, harbors, factories, open up new businesses and whatnot in those countries. In return, we're going to see those profits trickle back into the United States. So kind of like building up the Latin American nations. he felt like it would give us more markets, give us more access to raw materials in those regions, and ultimately build better relations with those countries too. Let's build them up. Let's build them all these things. But in reality, I mean, the United States is making out like a champion here. They're going to benefit and profit the most, and any profits or very little profits actually trickle down to the to Latin American and South American countries. Okay, let's skip down to Woodrow Wilson. Wilson's imperialist policy was known as moral diplomacy. So, on paper, less aggressive than Taft's and Roosevelt's. We're not going to flex our military muscles like Roosevelt and the Roosevelt corollary. We're not going to invest tons of money and resources in developing Latin American countries. He's basically trying to back off from these expansionist policies and world policing. His goal was to sort of spread democracy and peace through diplomacy. Let's talk about it. Hey, here's the United States. We're built on this constitution and democracy and freedom and all these, democratic principles, yada yada yada. Okay, sounds good. We're the promoter of democracy around the world. Okay, in theory that sounds great, but in reality, Wilson really does the opposite of moral diplomacy. This nicer, kinder, hey, we're the champions of freedom and democracy. Wilson ends up sending more troops abroad to South American, Latin American countries than Taft or Roosevelt have. So Wilson's going to be responsible for sending troops into Mexico. He's responsible for sending troops into Haiti, Dominican Republic, and of course, then ultimately World War One. So on paper, campaigning and giving speeches and whatnot, moral diplomacy sounded great. It sounded like it meshed with American ideals on liberty, freedom, democracy, and all that good stuff. But in reality, he was very much an imperialist president, very much involved in foreign countries and ensuring that the United States access to its resources and markets were squared away. So, just to kind of recap here, three imperial presidents, three plans. Roosevelt, think of the Roosevelt corollary. Corollary is a fancy way of saying in addition to. What's in addition to? The Monroe Doctrine of 1823. Right? Teddy Roosevelt, carry a big stick, right? Speak softly, carry a big stick. The idea of talk a good game, have the military there to back it up if need be. Taft, dollar diplomacy. Let's invest in South America, Latin American countries. Let's build infrastructure. What we invest, we're going to reap the rewards from here. We're going to get more money from what we invest in, right? Woodrow Wilson's moral diplomacy. Hey, be kind, freedom, democracy, all that good stuff. Sure, on paper. But in reality, Wilson is actually sending more people abroad and getting more involved in foreign countries than the previous presidents.